My session, How to Eat an Elephant. I was at JiraCon last year and I watched all of these amazing sessions about process changes and tools and systems. And I was like, wow, I want to implement all of these at my work, Renaissance Electronics, where I had just been hired as a process improvement facilitator and a Scrum Master. I was the first Scrum Master. And then I sat down and I was like, but how am I going to do this and not make everyone hate me? So for the last year, I have been working on all of these different approaches and really refining my own process improvement approach. And I wanted to share some of what I've learned today. So that's the inspiration for this session. And I hope that these stories and tips help someone else implement change and help lower the stress a little bit in your own work environments. So here we go. So, a little bit about me. I actually just went through and I was trying to, thank you, Tiffany, Scrum Master role is, I agree, it is underrated. Um, I am a Scrum Master. I have a Drupal background. If you don't know what Drupal is, that's totally okay. It is a content management system similar to what WordPress does, but it is highly configurable. And just like Jira, because of all of the amazing configuration options, sometimes we get ourselves into positions that can be a little bit spaghetti and require a little bit of work to try and untangle. So it's funny that when I was putting the session together, I realized that part of the reason that I love Jira so much is because there are so many things for me to constantly be learning and improving and untangling, which is large part of the reason why I love Drupal so much. So that was interesting, an interesting thing to realize for me. Yeah, I'm here from the west coast of Canada. There are just photos of my dog here because I was looking for photos that show what my life is like or what I'm into. And it was actually just dog photos, and I didn't think anyone would be too upset about that. So this is my best friend, my roommate, my mentor, my alarm system. I've been in tech for over 10 years. I've been a web developer, primarily front end. I have a degree in design, so UI, UX, visual design. I jumped back into the code world because I love code. Ended up as a tech lead. I was a dev manager for a number of years, and now I am a Scrum Master and process improvement facilitator, as I mentioned. I'm also heavily involved in the open source community, in the Drupal open source community. I am a Drupal diversity and inclusion initiative lead, and I'm always trying to travel around and just talk to people about the importance of just leaving ourselves space to be human and about the importance of embracing diversity. So what is this session about? There are countless tools and methodologies and systems and processes and books and podcasts and all of these things, all about the ways that we can navigate change management. And I am actually not a change management consultant. I am a human who has had to figure out how to navigate this stuff. And so my perspective that I'm sharing today is coming from that of a Scrum Master and process improvement facilitator. I have a team of about 30 to 40 people, and I work quite closely with each of the engineers and the team leads as well as management. So that's where I'm coming from. And there are a lot of different types of challenges when we are navigating change management. So I hope to sort of zoom out and focus on the things that are going to be useful things to think about for all different makes and models of workplaces. So hopefully, no matter who you are, where you're coming from, or which acronyms you like using in your workplace, hopefully there's something really useful for you in this session. So there's three areas that I really center my own sort of facilitation practice around, and that is trust, communication, and resilience. So I'm going to tackle it from those three sort of categories and talk about how those come into play in my day-to-day. But before we get going, I want to talk about some definitions. And the reason I want to talk about some definitions is because there are some terms that I've noticed that we use interchangeably in the industry, in many industries, in the world of tech. And I really, really want to clarify what I mean when I'm saying these things. And I also just want to point at the fact that these terms are used interchangeably, and I don't think they should be. So, number one, the first one that I want to look at here, a plan is not the same as a strategy. It is not the same. We frequently kind of throw the terms around. I've heard people, even in senior leadership positions, kind of loosely using these terms. And then it gets even spicier because we talk about strategic planning. So, what does that actually mean? So, here's my attempt to level set on this one a little bit. Plan, very straightforward, detailed, step 1, step 2, step 3. For example, here's how you make a peanut butter and jam sandwich. You get your bread. Step 2, you get your jam. Step 3, you get your peanut butter. You probably know how to make a peanut butter and jam sandwich, so I'm not going to go too much farther into that. Strategy would be you need to address the issue of hunger, and so you are going to figure out how to feed yourself. So food as a solution for hunger is a little bit more of a strategy. So now when we get into our strategic planning, it is a combination of these two things. So for each challenge that might come up, when I'm doing strategic planning, I try and make sure that there are sometimes multiple plans that are available depending on the situation for the challenge that I understand might come up. So if I want to make sure that my team is able to be highly productive and minimize disruption, as any good Scrum Master is going to want to do, or manager is going to want to do, my strategic plan might be, hey, you know what? I know that my team is going to get hungry sometimes, and so I'm going to make sure that there are instructions in the kitchen for how to assemble a peanut butter and jam. You might not actually need instructions, but you know. There are going to be peanut butter and jam sandwiches, or pea butter and jam sandwiches if they're peanut allergies. There are going to be cheese and crackers, and every once in a while I'm going to order pizza. And so there are a number of different plans that are going to fit into our strategy for keeping our team as productive and able to focus on their work as possible. So obviously, that's a very slimmed down version of strategic planning. That is something that normally goes quarterly or even yearly. It's a much larger, longer term effort if you're doing strategic planning, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I use these terms. And this one, leaders are not facilitators. I get this a lot. As a Scrum Master, we use the term servant leader. I believe that's actually what's used in the Scrum materials, the Scrum guide. Servant leader. Often, what that actually looks like is more facilitation than purely just leading. When I have my leadership hat on, I'm delegating. I'm taking initiative. I'm being proactive. And when I have my facilitation hat on, I'm really listening to my team, and I'm making sure that I'm holding space for different views, and I'm trying to make sure that people feel comfortable in that space. And so it's not about me or my opinion. It's not about me taking initiative and leading the team and crushing our goals. It's about me listening and making sure that we can achieve an outcome from that time. Perhaps we're, in the context of process improvement, we're usually trying to solve a problem. And so I'm facilitating, I'm helping people have a conversation that's going to get us towards some solutions. So this is something that I wanted to clarify, not just because these terms kind of get loosely used interchangeably, or maybe they overlap, but a lot of the time I think that the leadership at my company thinks that I lead the process improvement effort, and I don't. I facilitate process improvement. I listen to my team, and I find ways to bring all of their voices together and find solutions that work for everyone as best as possible. It's not always possible. So leadership, facilitation, sometimes they overlap. They are not the same. And the last thing that I wanted to point at here is the definition of the word change. This is also important because there are different types of change. And as we're navigating change and we are coming up with strategies or doing strategic planning for change management or process improvement, it's really important to consider the different types of change that we might have to be facing. So at my company, we really deal with transformational change. It has been an ongoing effort right from day one. I hit the ground running with process improvements, and we have been meeting and discussing and tackling problem after problem after problem, just peeling back the layers and transforming from what was before I joined, and before there was a pretty significant organizational overhaul before I started working there last year. We have been tackling a lot of problems, and so it's not just developmental change. Developmental change would be if we as a department, as a team, decide that we're going to learn a new skill, or we're all going to learn about Google Tag Manager. Might be a developmental change. Transitional change might be if we're going from Kanban and we're all going to switch to using conventional Scrum with sprint planning. And transformational is a much bigger, longer term effort, more constant change. And so it's really important to think about what type of change when we're coming up with our strategies. Okay, so this is a little bit unconventional. I am actually going to mention my resources, or some of my resources, not all of them. I'm going to mention some of these resources first before I get into the guts of this session. And then there is actually a slide at the end that has more links. I found an article that talks about change management models and gives you an overview. So I put all of that stuff at the end, but I just wanted to quickly show you some of the tools that we have here for navigating change. So as I said, I'm really talking about, the guts of what these different models are about. These are the scaffolding, it's the structure. These are tried, tested, proven models. In fact, if you search top 10 change management models, you will find an entire first page of links that talk about these. You'll get some articles that are like 7 and some are 8, but they name these same 10 models over and over again for a reason. So if you are someone who is not a change management professional, if you are being tasked with facilitating some process improvements or trying to make sure that the changes at your workplace or your organization are being adopted smoothly, definitely take some time to look into some of these models. I have also included, there's a PDF in my resource slide towards the end of my session. I will also share the slides. But there's a PDF that has a quick table of each of these models and sort of what they're good for, the best use cases for them, and the sort of the pros and cons kind of each one. So that will also help you pick one that really resonates with you. And the other thing I want to say about this is a lot of change management, a lot of process improvement isn't just if it's a good choice, it's if people think it's a good choice. So you want to make sure that you're picking one that works for you, but if you need buy-in from your team and your manager, make sure that you're talking to them about which model you're using too and agree on it as best as possible. So if you have a lot of resistance right from day one because people don't believe in the process of process improvement, you're not going to be setting yourself up for success. So try your best to set yourself up for success. There are a very wide range of models here in these 10. So you're going to have nudge theory, which is a much sort of looser, more informal theory. ADKAR and PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, are very, very popular. Personally, I do Plan, Do, Check, Act, or my own version that I built on Plan, Do, Check, Act. More is really, really helpful for understanding resistance to change. So there are three the what do they call it? The three levels of resistance to change, which are I don't get it, I don't understand. And then the next level is I don't like it because we don't like having to do things in our workplaces that don't make sense to us, right? That's logical. And then level three is I don't like you. You don't want to get to level three. So more is a really a great model for looking at, even if you don't end up using it. It's a good one to read. McKinsey, of course, I love McKinsey because it really covers a very broad range of variables. So that's a good one to read. And Kubler-Ross, I have to say I laughed. I laughed out loud because I didn't recognize the name Kubler-Ross. And so if you don't recognize the name, I will read to you the stages of the change curve. You may recognize them. They are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And if you have ever been the victim of subpar change management strategies, then those might actually resonate with you very deeply. So I had a bit of a laugh because I've definitely had some experiences with being a member on a team, and it didn't go very well. And so I was able to take from those experiences and learn from them and apply some improvements in my current company. And I'm really proud of my team, and I'm really happy with all of the lessons that I've learned. But the Kubler-Ross one is actually a really great tool because it also helps us understand what people need at each stage. And again, this session is it's all about people. So, breezing through here, there are some really great books. You might be wondering why there is a book like The Culture Map on this list. If you have a global team, this is definitely, I think this should be required reading if you have a global multicultural team. If you don't have a global multicultural team, I still recommend reading it. It's an amazing book, really great content for just discussing how we communicate, really, that has been amazing. My team is a Japanese team. I have people from Ukraine. I have people from all over Latin America, different places in the States. There are a couple folks from India. And so it was really fascinating to talk about how our individual cultures impact the way that we communicate with each other and the way that we show up to our workplaces. So it's really important, I believe, to embrace our differences and instead of trying to force everybody to just fit in the same box. So, Culture Map, really good read. All right, I'm just going to pause here. It was a lot of words. We're already 20 minutes in. Are there any questions? Thus far, I don't see any in the Q&A or the live chat. We're okay to proceed? All right. And I'll try and remember to pause at the different sections and just check in to make sure there are no questions. Trust. Trust is so important, and trust is so much more complex than I think that we really pause to think about a lot of the time. I think trust is really important in our workplaces in a lot of different ways. If you are on the more progressive side, you may have been exposed to the term psychological safety. Of course, as somebody who is heavily entrenched in the diversity and inclusion space, I hear and talk about psychological safety all the time. I decided to call this section trust because it's a word that I think that we can all sort of resonate with, and so let's talk about trust. Whether we call it trust or psychological safety, or whether it's another concept similar to these two, it's important in the context of a workplace, especially when navigating process improvement or feedback, because we need to have the knowledge and really hold the knowledge that it's okay to speak up, to share our opinions, to share bad ideas, because not all ideas are good, and that's okay. To make mistakes and just, otherwise be less than perfect and not be judged or have to worry about even be, potentially losing our jobs because of some momentary lapses of judgment. So psychological safety or having a really good sense of job security or really trusting your team is going to be an incredibly important part of process improvement and change management, because you need to know where people are at and how things are affecting them in order to be able to manage or facilitate change. So something that I want to talk about when we're talking about trust, something I want to point at. If the org chart hierarchy that was already in place were really ideal for innovating the kind of process improvements that you might be looking for, then you probably wouldn't need to have a whole process improvement discussion or initiative. You wouldn't need to do this huge change management strategy. You wouldn't need to worry about building trust or communication pipelines. And so I really want to make sure that we're thinking about our org chart hierarchy and how the sense of trust shows up in different spaces. No matter how good a manager you are always going to change the tone of the room when you walk in just because of your job title and your job role. They say this a lot, you can't be best friends with everyone on your team if you're going to also be their manager. It's kind of the same. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more, about how hierarchy can be utilized for your communication pipelines in really healthy ways. But we can also break away from that hierarchy and think about our communication pipelines in the context of just the individuals with their kind of boots on the ground doing the day-to-day execution. So hierarchy changes the tone in the room. We need to think about trust and familiarity when we are navigating our communication pipelines. And the other piece of this is that people in leadership positions typically aren't afraid to tell you what they think. In my work, I don't have to ask. I don't have to ask people in management what their opinions are. They will tell me. They will absolutely tell me. And this is often true in many other situations. Not exclusively, but often. So I want to talk about this concept of open doors. Recently I've really been noticing it. It kind of makes my eye twitch a little bit every time somebody says, well, we have an open door policy. I was having a great conversation with somebody who's from Latin America, and he laughed when we brought up this concept, and he said that where he's from in Latin America, even if somebody says, the door's open, you do not just walk into the CEO's office or the boss's office, the manager's office, and start telling them your opinion. It is not something that is culturally acceptable. It is not done. And so I really want to, emphasize that, I have an open door policy, but who walks through the open door is other people in management. It's not the voices that I'm hoping to hear. And so I think it's good to have an open door policy, but in the context of trust, you are asking that person to trust you, that it's okay to walk through your door and tell you your opinion. And you're also trusting them to speak up if there is something that they need to say. So, and it's a lot more complicated than I think that we really think about it. So, and the other piece is that I have been that person who's walked through an open door, and I trusted the person on the other side and shared some really exciting, positive, low lift ideas. And it didn't go well. It didn't go well. So in the context of trust, it's also really important to think about how you are receiving people's opinions and ideas. It can be pretty soul crushing when somebody says, "Hey, I want you to embrace thought leadership," or "I want you to share your ideas," and then somebody does what you ask them to do, and you say, "Oh, no, no, not like that, not like that." It doesn't feel good. So trust can be quite complicated. So what do I do at my workplace to really foster a culture of trust? I message my coworkers all the time and I check in with people, especially when I know that they have a stressful day, stressful project, something big happening. It's great if you can reach out and ask them if you can help, but sometimes just reaching out and saying, "Hey, I see how much work you're doing. You are crushing it. You are doing great. Are you okay? Do you feel like you're doing great?" Can really go a long way. I work really hard to lift people up. Um, I emphasize capability over accountability. So, what does this mean? If somebody misses a meeting, I don't get mad at them, I don't get upset with them. I actually emphasize the importance of being able to skip a meeting if there is something else that is high priority going on. So if somebody's not at one of my meetings, and I do try really hard to come up with systems and processes that allow for this to happen. But when somebody misses a meeting, I tell them it's okay because I trust that they were dealing with a sick kid, perhaps, or a high priority ticket, or they're in a really important flow state and they made the judgment call that showing up to that meeting was not as valuable for use of their time as it might have been to just message me after. I know that this is going to be controversial and this is not going to work for every workplace, but actually, my meetings are almost all optional. And if it is really important, somebody shows, I will message them and let them know, or I'll ping them and say, "Hey, I really need you to pull yourself out of whatever flow state you're in if you can, and hop into chat about something." But for the most part, anytime something goes wrong, somebody misses a deadline, somebody drops a ball, I ask them what they need. I asked them what would have helped them succeed, and is there anything that we can do differently in the future? Because I trust that my team is smart and dedicated. I know that they want to hit their deadlines. I know that they want to do good work. So if you are hiring smart, capable people and they are dropping balls, there's something that we should be able to do to support them to do better work. And that starts with trust. We have to trust that they are trying. Oh, I think I already mentioned talking about listening to ideas. I didn't talk about imposter syndrome. I normalize imposter syndrome all the time, especially with new people. New people come in and I'm like, wow, there's a lot to take in for this server side monolith. This is a big project. It's okay to feel a little overwhelmed. I certainly did. Just normalizing imposter syndrome. Last one that I recognize I'm jumping around a little bit. Last one on this list is I have very little tolerance for blame. I know that when stress levels start to creep up and get a bit higher, it's very tempting to try and blame other people for things going wrong. I don't fixate on blame. I definitely encourage people to face forward, and I will say things like, "Hey, I recognize that this didn't go perfectly and this is really stressful, but let's talk about what we can do better next time." I think it's really, really important to just cancel blame. It's not helpful. It is not helpful. It does not help us work together. It is not a great tool for collaboration. So, okay, quick pause, check to see if there are any questions so far. I'm about to jump into the next section talking about communication, and I'm going to show you what I built my process improvement team to look like. I don't see any questions. Okay. Here we go. Communication. I could do this whole session and then 3 more just like it, all on communication. If you communicate too much, you're going to overload people and lose them. If you don't communicate enough, they're going to start to sort of disassociate from the process. They're going to disengage. You might end up with resistance because they're going to feel blindsided by process changes or things that that affect them. If you use the wrong medium, they might not take in the information. And if you use the wrong language or jargon, they might not understand. And communication critical is critical. I cannot imagine a process improvement effort or a change management strategy that does not have a really solid plan and or strategy for communication. So what does that actually mean? So I want to talk about our communication pipeline. I use this term quite a bit. I'm not sure if it is something that is really familiar to everybody. So communication pipeline, I just mean the path that your communication, that your information and your updates and your announcements is flowing. So usually your manager is going to be responsible for communicating updates from up top, policy changes, whatever's happening, upcoming holidays that need to be handled in a certain way, whatever it is. Your manager is usually the person who is a core part of your communication pipeline. But when we're talking about the context of process improvement, I need more than a top-down communication strategy, especially because a lot of the managers and the team leads, they're already super, super busy. They're already overloaded. And I don't want to add more to their plates that it's just another ball for them to drop. That doesn't feel good. And then I thought, what happens if somebody wants to take a week off? If I'm relying on my org chart and the hierarchy to be the sole source of my communication pipeline, is that going to work? Do I just stop improving processes if somebody takes a week or 2 weeks off? That doesn't make any sense. So I thought there's got to be a better way to go. So think about your communication pipeline. Think about your org chart. Who in your org chart, this is a simplified version of mine. Who in your org chart do you already hear from on a regular basis? Where are people already chatting? How can you make sure that the communication and the information is getting out to everybody? And those people, if they have a voice or if they have something that needs to be heard, how do we make sure that those people can be heard as well? So this is my org chart. As a Scrum Master, I have 1 foot in the blue up here, which is management, and 1 foot in the yellow down here, which is sort of our day-to-day execution. And here is my process improvement group. There are no managers in my group. The reason for this is because I hear from the managers multiple times a week, and anytime they have an opinion that they want me to hear, they will tag me, DM me, huddle, book a meeting. They are fearless. I don't need to hear their opinions more. They're great opinions. I have a fantastic team of management, just in case anybody's watching from my workplace. Great, great team of managers, but they're not afraid to tell me what they think. And I don't need to hear their opinions over the opinions of the people who are going to have they're going to be really the ones who are using the systems and processes the most when it comes to updating Jira workflows, for example. And so it's really, really important to me that I created a process improvement group that I see that there's a question there. So I'm just going to finish this thought. And then I will pause and check in with questions. So I really wanted to make sure that I had a process improvement group where we could have a very strong degree of psychological safety. And you will notice that there are 2 people. So I have my team lead, and then I also have an extra person from each team. And the reason for this is that in practice, that looks like this. Each of these people, so this is me in the middle looking very content. And each of these people ends up working as an ambassador. So they are facilitating adoption. They are representing the needs of their individual team because each team serves a different purpose, has different focus areas. They listen to the team members and they relay problems or ideas back to me. And they also support me with training the team and communicating as updates are happening. And then really, really importantly, They advise me on when we need to pump the brakes and slow down or stop because I don't want to overwhelm anybody with change. We all receive information in different ways, but the most important thing is not to blindside anybody. Cultural differences can play a big part. Personality differences can play a big part. If you have a neurodiverse team, you probably actually do have a neurodiverse team. Statistically, there are going to be neurodiverse people on many teams. But there are so many different factors that play into communication. And the best way, I think, to improve communication is to talk about it. Keep asking questions, keep thinking about it. And if it's not working, instead of getting frustrated with the other person, think about your part. You get to control 50% of what communication looks like. Question. Do you know a tool or app that can help with drafting process and procedures? So this is a really difficult question to answer, and the reason for that is that, as I was saying before, there are different mediums, there are different communication styles. So I actually, you're going to hate this answer, Tiffany, but I don't rely on any one system or tool. I talk to my team in the beginning of my retrospectives. I send out emails with highlights. I send out automated emails sometimes with if there are certain pieces of information about specific tickets that need to be communicated at a certain time. I send out Slack announcements. I have video calls. I actually just try and make sure that I am telling people that the things are happening and giving them the opportunity to find out more information in a format that makes sense for them as much as possible. That's what works for my team. And this is really not a straightforward question because what is working for one team might actually be very different from what works at a bank. And it really depends on the size of your team. If it's a really, really big sort of organization, you might need a full comms strategy or a comms plan that says step by step, when X type of change happens, we will communicate it in these ways. So it's a really complicated question. But I welcome you if you want to reach out to me and find me on LinkedIn. I have my LinkedIn info coming up quickly. And I'd be happy to brainstorm some ideas with you. Okay, last section here is resilience. So it's just this one slide. One thing that I pay a lot of attention to at my company is, when we did this whole reorg effort, and there are people who are subject matter experts who have been a part of the company for years and years and years. And what ends up happening is that every single ticket, every single question, every task ends up getting assigned to them. Not only is this really stressful, but they become bottlenecks. And then what happens if they need to take a week off? They can't. Or they can, and then they come back to just a torrential mountain avalanche of tasks, right? And it's not good. It's really, really disruptive. So I think a lot about redundancy, especially if there's an important ticket or task, a meeting, or just anything, any touch point in my processes. I try and make sure that anybody involved can be able to jump off, go take care of their dog, go take care of their grandmother, go get a last minute anniversary present for their spouse, whatever it is that they need to do to hop off. I want them to feel like they can do that and go and be a human being, whatever that looks like, and not disrupt the rest of the team. So I think about resilience a lot. Intuitive designs first. So you'd think that this was something that was more straightforward, and maybe because I have a UI UX background, it's something that I didn't realize I am actually a little bit more trained in than I thought. But When I'm navigating process improvement, when I'm facilitating process improvement, I work really hard with my team to come up with things that don't really need explaining. And so much like when you're playing a video game and they introduce things step by step, it can also be, this is also a tool that can be used in your workplace when you're introducing things. So if you give people a whole lot of change all at once, sometimes that's really overwhelming. But if you give people, hey, we're going to try this change. Okay, now we're going to layer this thing on. That is something that works for my company, my teams to try and slowly iterate through changes and get to the final product. Again, we're going through transformational change, so we have to be able to kind of go slowly. There is no ripping the Band-Aid off with transformational change. That would be incredibly overwhelming for the most part. So this is something that we do. And regardless of how we're introducing these changes, the more the change, the more the system or process is intuitive and easy to use for people, the less you're going to have to police it, the less you're going to have to spend time explaining and training and, really advocating for adoption. I also make dashboards for every single meeting. I have a dashboard. I just open up the dashboard. I put all of this is Jira dashboards, just talking about putting the information in one place. All the information for a task, put it in one place, hand it to the person. All the information for a meeting or anything that I'm asking of one of my team leads, I'm like, here's a dashboard with everything that you need to tell me what I need. So I try to make it easy for people. And then the very last question is, what happens if you try and roll out a change and it doesn't get adopted? What happens if people don't use it perfectly? Because when we're talking about building a culture of trust, it's also really important to make sure that we're setting people up for success. And so when we roll out changes and it's like, you have to do this perfectly or you're going to fail your whole team and everything's going to be really bad. It's a really high stress thing to do. But if you try and think of ways to implement sort of guardrails and safety nets as you're rolling out changes, so that when people don't read the comms, the communication very clearly, or they don't understand, or maybe they were on vacation the week that everybody else got trained up in this new tool, what happens? What happens for those people? What happens if somebody, it's just not intuitive for them? We thought it was going to be intuitive, and it's not. So it's really important to come up with these safety nets and make sure that people are supported, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult to sort of build that culture of kindness and collaboration. You're quickly going to default back to stress and blame, which is what we want to avoid. Okay, went a little bit longer than I meant to. But as I promised, there is a link and resource page here that has a whole bunch of the things that I've mentioned. I know that I went a mile a minute. Please, please, please do feel free to reach out to me either on this platform. My LinkedIn information is on the final slide. And actually, my name is pretty unique by design. Faye's not my first legal name, but it's my nickname and it has great SEO potential. So it's really easy to find me online if you just search my name. And I'm pretty involved, pretty engaged online. So feel free to reach out to me. I love questions. I'm not actually here to promote an app or my company or anything like that. I'm just here because I love sharing information about how to work with people and make our jobs just a little easier. So if there are any other questions, feel free to quickly ask them now. I'll do my best to answer in a few minutes, or as I said, I don't see any questions. Unless I missed any. Okay. Whew. I need to catch my breath now. I'm glad this is recorded. I'm sure that was probably a lot of information and hard to take it all in rapidly. But you should see the last slide now. I shared my slides out. It is a bit.ly how to eat an elephant, HTEAE23. LinkedIn is a great way to find me. Please add me. Please message me. And please ask me all of the questions. What was one item you've been able to move forward in your first year that you are most proud of? Oh my gosh, Shelley. When I first joined Renaissance, we did not have, there was no Scrum Master, there was no sprint planning. We had an average age of, I'm not even going to say, it was more than the 20 to 30 days that it is now. We basically in a year have implemented story points. We have a solutions initiative to provide technical support for each other and product owners and managers. We're doing much longer term planning now. I can't even name them all. It's just been an incredible amount of change. And the thing that I'm most proud of is my team. Honestly, my process improvement team is so good at really embracing agile process improvement and iterating through just trying things. They're really open-minded and they really listen to each other. Even if they don't agree, we just keep listening. And so I think I might be most proud of my process improvement team. I think. I don't know. I'm proud of a lot of things. So, yeah. Okay. Hopefully that was the only question. I didn't miss anything. And yeah. Wow. That was it. 50 minutes later. Okay. The next sessions, cloud migrations and no Jira science required. Both of those sessions sound fantastic, and I hope to see y'all in one of those.